Hello YouTube, this is a quick let's play of EVERSPACE. It's a roguelike action space shooter developed by Rockfish Games, and it's also a Kickstarter I back. So we'll go ahead and get started. What you won't see here is you probably won't see any story that's unlocked as the game progresses, and I'm continuing a playthrough here. One thing that EVERSPACE features is it features some permanent upgrades. So in terms of roguelike elements, there's sort of a permanent upgrade system every time you finish a run. Any credits you finish, which I've spent most of mine here, but you can invest in things like more critical hit or more credits or more weapon slots. So it's really this game is really EVERSPACE is really focused on sort of a permanent upgrade system, but let's go ahead and get started and see where this run takes us. Alright, so I've just entered a new area, Sector 1, beginning of a run. You can see on around the screen I get some indicators. These are kind of radar indicators I'm getting shot at.
Result.
So you have sort of a scanner or sensor system. It can't detect everything. It seems like it tends to detect things more as you get close within range, and there are ways that the game interacts with that. So this is Sector 1, and I've got a few upgrades unlocked, so the encounters will be relatively easy. Not trivial, but not too difficult. Let's see. So again, this is not a sim game. This is an action game. So the controls are pretty snappy. You've got forward, back, strafe left, strafe right, fly up, fly down, boost. Not a lot of I guess inertia or having to fly certain ways. Your controls are pretty tight. Looks like I've flown into this kind of asteroid belt, and this area happened to have like a little bit of an outlaw outpost. I grabbed the tech container there with an upgraded shield. Swap that out. So again, this is a roguelike game, so these things will be very much random. We'll probably see more of the combat as well. I'm sure we'll see more of the combat. There's more of that to talk about. So now what I'm doing is, within the sector, if you think of this in sort of like if you've ever played FTL in sort of an FTL fashion or other roguelikes, you have sort of different sections. Your early section is going to be pretty easy. You're going to use it to collect some basic resources, and then kind of progress forward. So here we've got some random items floating around in space. Looks like there's some sort of wreckage here, and also some mineable items like we saw with the crystal. And these items are used in crafting and repairing, and to a lesser extent trading. I haven't seen a lot of traders, but you can trade. So I'll go ahead and mine the scrap. That's actually something I don't think I've seen a lot of, is mineable scrap. Mine things by shooting them for a few seconds. The game lets you know kind of when everything's fully mined out. And different sectors have different things, so this one's a bit more spread out. You see them kind of bouncing around. I'm not seeing anything on my radar, except nanobots are pretty useful. Sometimes, since your sensors can't detect everything, sometimes it's worth looking for kind of visual indicators on the map. So something, that ping means something has has spotted me. Maybe a turret. There are different factions as well, 3 that I've seen so far. We'll talk about that shortly, so I'll explore. Okay, so what's shooting at me? Bet there's a turret hidden somewhere in this rock cluster. Anything else here worth grabbing? Dark matter. That's interesting. So the game just let me know I can craft something new. I usually don't jump on the crafting system right away, partly because when you first start out you can't really craft much of anything. So I've gotten into a habit of just ignoring it for part of the game until I get a few sectors in, and then stopping and thinking about it. You can take a look at that really quickly. So you see here, primary, secondary devices, consumables. For example, I could craft new weapons based on the blueprints which I have. In this case, it looks like I don't have enough ore, which is a mineable resource, to craft any of these things. You can also upgrade items, which is very useful. You can craft new secondary items, new types of missiles, or use crafting to replace your missiles. And for example, this plus, I found a shield plus. It has a mod already installed. Otherwise, I would craft that with an upgrade, like a recharge delay or capacity or whatever. So let's go ahead and jump to the next sector, and I'll talk a little bit more about the equipment as we progress through the game. So once you're done with the sector, generally there's this jump. You can see that Okar forces inbound, so if you stay too long in a sector, the game starts spawning some fairly tough waves of enemies. So it's, again, referencing to other games, like FTL is one I played a lot. And this is a very different game from FTL, but it has sort of that that similar element of kind of pushing you along with, in that case, it was the Imperial forces or whatever chasing you around. So here we see the GMB faction and the Outlaw faction. If you remember, I mentioned there are 3 factions I've seen: GMB, the Okari, and the Outlaws. GMB is actually a faction that's kind of neutral to you, so they're not generally hostile to anyone except maybe the Outlaws, but the Outlaws seem to be hostile to everyone. So generally speaking, I try to avoid GMB to avoid aggroing them. So I can pick up the secondary weapon. I'll go ahead and salvage that. But sometimes they'll fight with Outlaws. They don't fight with the Okari. So basically the Outlaws are hostile to everybody. The Okari are hostile to you, and of course the Outlaws, and the GMB are neutral towards everyone except for the Outlaws, who seem to attack everything in sight. So in this sector, I'm going to fly towards this big structure or formation here. One thing that is really cool about EVERSPACE is it's a very visually striking game, and being a roguelike game, you'll see quite a few different structures. So I don't know if I've seen this one before, with these kind of like long rocks. So I'll fly towards the structure to see if my scanner picks up anything. I have to be a little careful here because this could be like a GMB facility. They could turn hostile if I shoot anything or mess with anything. Looks like there are some containers around here. Let's see if this is hopefully this is a neutral container. Okay, so picked up a couple of devices. Took a little damage from bumping into something. So let's go ahead and pull up the inventory here and look at these. Okay, that's really good. I've never seen this before. This is a device that gives me more energy. And this second one is a device that So most devices and weapons take some amount of your energy away, like this one, in exchange for an effect. So like your shield, obviously it gives you a shield, prevents you from taking hull damage, that recharges over time. This one's a tractor beam, so in exchange for some energy I can pick up items from farther away. Kind of a little quality of life improvement. Now if you look here on the cursor, I'll go ahead and start to jump to the next sector because I don't see a whole lot happening in this sector. But if you look below my targeting reticle, you'll see a green bar. That's basically my energy bar, and that's used for boosting. Travel to the next sector, medium risk. That's used for boosting and for firing your weapons and using some of your active devices. So as I shoot here, you can see that green bar is kind of depleting. If I start boosting, it'll deplete more. Not smash into an asteroid there. And yeah, I've upgraded it somewhat because I actually focused on upgrading energy because it's used for moving and shooting, which you do a lot of. It's not super restricted, it regenerates pretty quickly, but in extended battles, if you're doing a lot of shooting and kind of dodging, running out of energy is no fun. Let's start boosting towards maybe the middle of this asteroid cluster. So I'm going to fire out all my energy, sort of like it was an extended fight. And that red space is basically what my devices are taking up. So you can see, like, now that I'm out of energy, my weapon's just kind of sputtering and I can't boost. So that's like not a fun place to be in a fight. There are consumable items, that fourth slot here. Right now I only have a shield booster, but there's like an energy injector that can help replenish energy. And also just sitting still or moving slowly replenishes your energy. So it regenerates fairly quickly, but if you burn it out in like an extended fight, it can become an issue. So we haven't seen a ton of combat. One of the things I haven't talked about a lot is kind of the weapons and equipment. So your loadout basically has a primary and secondary weapon. Secondaries, as far as I've seen, are mostly like missile type items. Your standard ship, which is what...
This could be a sticky situation here.
It's attacking me. Some dialogue. These are just more outlaws. But this is a good time to talk about the weapon types, because your standard loadout has two weapons. Sort of like a pulse laser and a Gatling gun. And the pulse laser does a lot of damage to shields, while the Gatling gun does more damage to... doesn't do much damage to shields, but it does decent damage to hull. And of course there are different weapons and secondary effects that play around with this, but it's sort of that basic, like, you know, use lasers on shield, use guns on hull dynamic for your standard loadout, which is, it's interesting enough. It makes you think about, like, using different types of primary weapons and how you upgrade and like what your loadouts are. This third slot, we talked about devices a little bit. There are passive devices like the shield, but there are also active devices like this weapon overdrive. So before or in the middle of a fight, I can spend some of my energy to activate this effect, which is on a cooldown. I can just go ahead and do that now. So basically this one increases the rate of fire of my weapon. I think it reduces the energy cost of it, and it increases the damage. So basically just kind of like, in exchange for some energy, it kind of pumps my weapons up for a period of time. Which is useful in like tougher encounters if you get attacked by a lot of little ships or you're going up against one of the bigger ships. Flying through the structure. See a container, looks like maybe not much else. Got some mines. And then yeah, so the weapon overdrive is on cooldown now. Grab these containers and probably zip out of here. So Jumping between each sector uses fuel, which is in the top right. So far it's a resource I haven't had too much trouble with, but I think it basically is kind of it encourages you to explore an area. It prevents you from just jumping between areas, like avoiding threats and things like that. Obviously you could get to the end of the game pretty quickly if you could just jump through everything. Fighting ships seems to give a decent amount of fuel a lot of times, so like killing these little fighters and things, oftentimes they'll drop a small amount of fuel, as well as just generally exploring. And there are places sometimes that sell fuel. So just destroy. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up these enemies. Otherwise, there's a decent chance while I'm doing something else this looks like some sort of base. Shields off fire. This is here. Shot from somewhere else. Nanobots are used for repairs. That's an important. Yeah, there's some fuel probably from that fight. Anything here? Looks like just a base. Okay. Since I've reached the end of the sector, there's this jump gate. It doesn't cost any fuel to use, and it basically pushes you to the next sector where, not surprisingly, you're going to see new kind of areas of space. You're going to see maybe slightly tougher enemies, things like that. So what is this item? Energized boost. That's a device. I'm going to salvage that. That's not like the devices I'm using now. Got some credits floating in space. That's nice. I guess whatever ship blew up must have been carrying some of it.
Counted and deposited.
Oh yeah, there is a story in this game, mostly unlocked as you progress. There's some light dialogue, which it's a little campy, but it doesn't bother me. I kind of find it amusing. There are different types of weapons. I could possibly even craft one, depending on the blueprints I have. So I have a pulse laser. The beam laser I kind of like. What is a shock rifle? Low damage, shield and hull damage. I have not tried this weapon before. Since I have the materials, I will go ahead and give it a shot. Sounds like this one. Okay. So you can fire it quickly for low damage or charge it up before an encounter, I suppose.